All righty, guys. Again, we're glad that you're here. So, Thomas, do we have the results of the poll? Do we have time to put them up right now? So we got the results of the poll. Check it out, all right? According to you just voted, the most recent conflict with a loved one. Some of you said today. The winner is within the last week. Some of you said within the last month, and others of you said it's been over a month. So it's interesting, look at it. The number of people that had over a month is far less than the other three, all right? So I think we probably got a good topic tonight. Now to start things off, we've got a video that we want you to just check out. It's kind of heavy, so check out this video if you would.
You come out here to talk about parenting styles?
You know we have a sensitive daughter, Jace. She cries when you look at her sideways. Never mind the tone of voice you use with her.
Sorry I haven't read as many parenting books as you, but maybe she just needs to learn to cope. Not getting to read a book before bed is not the end of the world.
You use the same tone of voice with me.
Sometimes you cry when you don't get to read your Kindle at night. Me, I'm more of a Netflix guy, so it's really not
Stop. Okay, just stop it. Everything is a joke with you. I feel like we're not communicating anymore.
Okay. This is about us. Oh, you communicate great. Yeah, with the way you undermine me all the time in front of her, and in front of everyone for that matter. Our friends, our family. You cut my legs off at the knees and it's emasculating.
You do that all on your own, Jace. We're supposed to be rubbing off on each other. We're supposed to be finding the good in one another.
Yeah.
Not just you affecting me.
So what am I missing?
I feel like I'm the one doing all the bending. I know how much I've changed over the years, and if you could
Are you kidding me? You're doing all the bending. You are.
You used to. When we first got married, everything was just so...
We were different. We were kids. What are you not saying?
I'm just saying, you never want to talk about us.
Well, that's calling the kettle black, isn't it? Coming from the person that makes indirect comments about everything I say and do because you're so afraid of conflict? Why don't you just come out and say it? I'm not like you, and that's the problem, right?
Well, surely I'm of some use to you. You're not just here for my benefit. I'm here for you, too. I'm just telling you that you could just...
And I'm telling you, I'm not your father. I'm sorry. I love you. I love our daughter. I'm not going anywhere. But I'm not your dad, and I'm being punished for the way he treated you, and it's not fair.
Right. So I guess I'm just some poster child for daddy issues. All in one sentence. Congratulations. I'm glad we got that settled.
That's not what I said. You misunderstood me.
I'm going to bed.
We used to assume the good. We used to see the best in each other.
Wow. What a video. The truth is we all experience conflict. Whether we are single, whether we are dating, whether we are engaged, whether you are married, with small children, whether you have been married 20 years or 30 years or 50 years or more, we all have conflict because we're all human. And conflict is inevitable. You're gonna have conflict because, listen, human beings disagree, all right? But conflict is inevitable, but combat doesn't have to be, all right? And what we're gonna talk about tonight, hopefully, is how do we disagree without being disagreeable? How do we argue without assassinating the other person? And how do we fight fair? Because in a relationship, when, not if, but when there is conflict, you either have a breakdown or a breakthrough. When there's conflict in communication, there's either a breakdown or a breakthrough to a new level of intimacy and closeness and friendship. The key is how you respond, how you react to conflict. So tonight's about conflict, sweetheart.
Yes, and Kevin wanted me to say again that if this is your first night here, we're not licensed marriage counselors. We don't claim to have a perfect marriage. We've been married about 30 years now, and we have learned a lot and are still learning a lot in these 30 years. And really, quite frankly, this topic tonight, Kevin and I have really stunk at. We have really learned a lot in these 30 years, good, bad, and ugly.
Well, let's just be honest. So yeah, we've been honest, and like the video, we've had a lot of conflict. We didn't have a lot of conflict while we were dating, but then we got married. And then we went on our honeymoon. And matter of fact, I don't know if this happened to you, but we had a fight on our honeymoon.
But it was the last day.
Thank goodness for that, by the way. All right? And we have a couple of pictures we like to show you, so stick these pictures up here. Here we are. We went on a cruise for our honeymoon, and this is the classic picture they take of you before you get on the ship. Now, believe it or not, I know that looks like Terry, but that really was me, okay, there in the picture. And there's another one. Look at this while we're on the cruise. Man, look at that nice couple right there. And everything was great. And, as we talked about, we ended up, I think it was our last night, and we ended up having I don't even remember what the conflict was about.
No, and I think it was like really silly. Like it was like really, it wasn't that big of a one. Just a little rub there,
Yeah, and so one of the things we got to talk about is that, we all deal differently with conflict.
Right. And the first one, there's different common reactions to conflict. And the first one is we ignore it and hope it will go away. And of course, it never goes away, and you have to deal with it. And of course, we're always going to have conflict.
And then the second common reaction to conflict on your handout is we give the silent treatment. We're all familiar with this one, right? It's where one person simply refuses to talk about it. I see elbows going everywhere out there, right? I mean, you're all familiar with that, right? You have a little tiff, and one person says, "Well, I just don't want to talk about it," right? I just want to talk about it. And then the third one, common reaction,
is you win at all costs. And of course, you're feeling hurt in an argument, and so you want to kind of make the other person feel hurt in the argument. And of course, you're competitive, and you want to win. You're going to win this argument.
This is one of the things that, quite frankly, I stink at this, okay? I mean, this is me. I'm the win-at-all-costs guy when we get in an argument. I'm going to win this argument. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what collateral damage there is. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that in the heat of a conflict have said things that as soon as the words left your mouth, you wanted to reach out, grab them and stuff them back in there, right? And sometimes a common reaction to conflict is win at all cost. And that leads to another one is we push the other person's buttons. The truth is we all know what really fires up our spouse. Now in that video we just watched, obviously it was something about her dad and a relationship with her dad, and the husband knew if he crossed that line, there'd be a reaction. We all know, especially when we're losing the argument, we give in to the temptation of pushing our spouse's buttons, but it's really silly, it's really dumb. The Bible says it this way on your handout: the fool that provokes his family to anger and resentment will finally have nothing left. So words are so important. A lot of times Terry will say to me in the middle of a conflict, you'll say what? About what I do to your words?
You twist my words.
And how do I twist your words?
You twist them to make it where you're right and I'm the one who's wrong.
Yeah.
When I'm the one who's right and you're the one who's wrong.
And so, yeah, sometimes that happens in the middle. She's like, well, you're twisting my words. And I'm like the guy on the swing there. I didn't say that. That's not what I meant, And so many times in a conflict, we say something and we didn't mean it the way the other person heard it.
Right, and then the next one is bringing up the past in 1 Corinthians 13:5. And of course, that verse talks about, the Bible keeps no record of wrongs. You shouldn't keep record of wrongs. But when you're in an argument or a discussion, you feel like you're kind of losing the argument, and so you kind of bring up the past ammunition, and you bring up the past, and try to get fired up and make your point.
Yeah, and you kind of say things like, you always.
I remember the time.
I remember the time. You bring up the past. And then F, probably another common reaction to conflict is you just become a doormat and somebody gives in. It's really false humility. Well, I just don't want to fight about it, so whatever you want is okay with me. And everybody in the whole world knows it's not okay, right? Okay, when we say it's okay, whatever you want, and you know that's not the case, right? And now in a marriage, often opposites sometimes attract. There are other common reactions to conflict. Matter of fact, this morning I was introduced to another common reaction to conflict that I had never heard. Our staff gathers every day at 9 o'clock, and we kind of just do staff prayer time. We pray for you, we pray for the church, and so one of the folks on the staff, I'm not going to say which one, and so she said, hey, would you pray for my husband? He's got this big thing happening today. And we said, sure. And she said, I was helping him last night, and he was studying for this test he had to take. And it's a really important test, and we said, okay. And she said, we just got this new puppy. And she just is talking, and she says, while I was helping my husband study, he was missing some of the questions, so we started bickering back and forth, and I was trying to help him study for this big test he's got, and he was falling asleep in the middle of preparing for his test, that it's his test, and we got this puppy, and so what I've been doing with the puppy is I just would be squirting the puppy. You squirt a puppy, right, to kind of like discipline the puppy. So she said my husband was falling asleep, so I squirted him with a water bottle. And then she just kept talking, okay? And I went on to the next thing. I said, whoa, wait a second. Did you just say when you had a conflict with your husband, you squirted him with a water bottle? She said, oh, yeah, but he knew. I didn't mean anything by it. I went, I hope you're there tonight at the study about conflict, because we wouldn't recommend squirting with one another with a water bottle, right? So at this point, another staff member pipes in. Oh, I remember the time that while I was in the shower, my husband dumped a bucket of cold ice water over top on me. I said, did that eliminate or create conflict, okay? At this point, I said, we probably just should pray right now, okay? And so anyway, there's common reactions to conflict. Now, James chapter 4, if you've got your Bible there, James chapter 4 says it this way: what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from desires that battle within you? You want something, but you don't get it. You kill and covet, but you cannot have what you don't want, what you want. So you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God, and when you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world is hatred toward God? James 4 gives us some common reasons for conflict. And when it really comes right down to it, he talks about the desires that battle within us. He's talking about that we all have what the Bible would call a sin nature. Even the great apostle Paul in Romans 7 said, the things I want to do are not the things that I do. And the things I don't want to do are the very thing that I do. And then he says, basically, there's this struggle, this battle that's going on inside of me. There's this sin nature. And when we think about common reasons for conflict there, the first thing on your handout, I want you to remember, we must remember that we will always have conflict. Again, we're humans. Humans disagree. The key is to disagree without being disagreeable. The key is to argue without assassinating. The key is to fight fair. And Terry, you read something in a book recently that you thought added to that book.
Yes, this book's called Adorned, and it's by a Nancy DeMoss. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name right, Woljmuth. But it's a great book, and actually on page 247, she kind of talks about this sin nature in all of us. And she says, this is for both men and women, the truth is, even the best marriage involves two sinners perpetually humbling themselves, getting to Christ, and receiving and dispensing grace. And then further on down, she says, but it helps to remember that your husband's strengths and his weaknesses are exactly what you need to become the woman God wants you to be, and vice versa. And then, of course, we love our cruises. And so we have a picture here of Kevin here. I caught Kevin having a little test there of his sin nature. It's perfect.
I can't believe she shared that picture.
It's perfect.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later tonight. We've got to remember that, the key is how we respond, right? I mean, it's that classic illustration that when between you, there's a little bit of spark that's developing. And I'm not talking about that kind of spark, okay? I'm talking about an angry kind of spark. There's a little bit of conflict developing. Somebody said once, we either at that moment pour gas on the fire or we pour water on the fire. And the way we pour it is the words we use. At that moment, there's a little tiff, there's a little disagreement. You can kind of hear it in their voice. You can read it in their body language. You can see it in their voice tone. And it's about ready to start. And at that moment, if you would just maybe picture in your mind that you are either going to pour gas on the fire or water on the fire with the next thing you say. And just, guys, to be honest with you, men, if you're a married man here in the room, God charges us with the responsibility of taking the lead at this point. God charges us with the responsibility to not use a spray bottle, not a bottle of water, but a 5-gallon bucket full of water on that spark. But sometimes in our weakness, sometimes our sin nature comes out and we don't do that. We don't do that. And so as a result, the conflict increases, okay? So we're always going to have it. How we respond is crucial, and sometimes it increases. And there's several reasons, I think, especially for ladies, why the conflict increases. I think we've got 5 or 6 of them here for you. Terry's going to run through them real quick.
Sure. The first one is when we feel unaccepted. And, it says here, when you reject what or who I am, when you compare me to other people, when you nag me, when you make fun of me, I get angry. So the number 2 is when I feel unappreciated. And it's when you take me for granted, don't value my work, don't value my effort at home or at work. When everything else in the whole world seems more important than me, I get angry. Husbands, that's one of the main reasons your wife gets upset. She feels that everything else is more important than her.
And sometimes in our relationship, a lot of our conflicts have occurred where Terry thought she was not as as appreciated as maybe I felt about the church, or she felt second fiddle or third fiddle, if you will.
Sure, and then number 3 is when we feel unsupported. It's when we feel like the people in our family are working against us instead of with us. When they don't share their load of responsibilities, that makes us really angry.
So a tip would be, men, in the history of humanity, no wife has ever shot her husband while he was doing the dishes. Just a tip for you, okay? All right? No wife has ever shot her husband while he was doing the dishes, or probably while he was vacuuming, okay? All right? Just a little tip for you.
Okay, the number 4, when we feel unprotected. When the situations in our lives seem out of control, we feel like other people don't care about our needs. When we feel vulnerable, that makes us feel unprotected, and we usually get angry.
We talked about last week that the importance of security is so high. It's one of our ladies' greatest needs.
And the number 5, when we feel uncertain. If we don't feel like we can trust each other, or we don't know that the other people in our family are telling us the truth, that makes us angry. And then number 6, when we feel unforgiven, when we haven't forgiven ourselves or others.
And so again, we've kind of talked about some reasons for conflict. We're always going to have it, but we can do things or say things or not say things that cause it to increase. And then let's look at, see, what are the basic causes of conflict, okay? What are the basic causes of conflict? The first one is, of course, selfishness. That's what James 1 said. What causes fights and quarrels among you? They come from your desires that battle within you. You want something but don't get it, okay? There's a battle. The truth is, every sin we commit, every bad thing in the world can really be traced down to one thing, and that's selfishness. I want what I want.
And I want what I want, and I want it now. You know, and some of the examples for that, I mean, they're just your dislikes and your likes, you know, the things that you guys, you know, enjoy. And, you know, it might be the television, the remote control. That's a typical example. You know, which TV, you know, who gets the remote control, which TV station do you watch? You know, hot or cold temperature in your house.
Hey,
You know, the firmness of your mattress, you know, what number to put it on.
thank God.
Just, you know, just every day your dislikes and likes. You know, what restaurant do you want to go to? What do you want to eat tonight? What movie do you want to go see? I mean, just all your dislikes and your likes.
That's why some very wise person invented dual control electric blankets. And another wise person put different thermostats in a car. You know how you can control now one side versus another side, you know? I mean, look at them all nodding out there. Yeah. Okay. I mean, we see that in every day. There's selfishness, right? And the key is we normally don't notice this as much while we're dating. It seems to come out later in life, and we've got another video that kind of talks a little bit about that. So check this out.
I promise to love, honor, and respect you.
I promise to love, cherish, and protect you
From this day forward.
till death do us part.
I remember our wedding day. It was awesome. I mean, my dress was gorgeous, and all of the flowers were so beautiful. And everybody that I loved was there, you know, all of my family, and the day was just amazing. I mean, it was good. It was really, really good. And there was this moment right before I walked down the aisle, and I remembered looking up to God and just feeling so thankful for this man that he had given me.
I was scared to death. Seriously, I thought I was going to pee my pants. I mean, I don't usually get in front of people like that, let alone wearing a tux. Come on. I forgot to go to the bathroom before the ceremony started, and I kept thinking, don't pee yourself, and don't lock your knees, and keep breathing. And then all of a sudden, I looked up, and there she was. She took my breath away, and I never wanted it back.
Our honeymoon was amazing. I mean, we went to a tropical island, and it was just a whole week of relaxing, and we got to walk on the beach a lot and just spend time together. We were just so in love.
We went to the street vendors, and we were looking around at stuff, and we didn't have a lot of money, but I picked up this amber necklace and I put it up against her skin. And I knew she had to have it because she was worth it. And then we went home.
Once we got home, it was like something strange started to happen. I mean, it was like aliens came into our bedroom, scooped out his brain, and filled it with gummy bears. Honey, are those your dirty dishes in the sink?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know we have a dishwasher, right?
What? Yeah, and you're really good at it too, sweetheart. Could you not interrupt me when I'm watching TV? Or at least wait till commercial?
You see what I mean? Gummy bears.
After the honeymoon, I had a sneaking suspicion that she was sneaking out at night and taking night classes at some college on some foreign language because everything she said made 0 sense.
Do you like this shirt on me?
Yeah, looks good.
So you don't like the color?
What?
If you don't like the color, just say you don't like the color. I mean, I don't even know why I try to look nice for you.
Wait, what just happened here?
Why don't you think I'm pretty?
Why? Well, hold on, I do think you're pretty.
Well, you never say it.
I'm sorry, I think you're pretty.
Well, you can't say it now. I just told you to say it. I mean, that totally doesn't even count.
But wait, how am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to say unless you tell me what I'm supposed to say?
I can't believe you don't love me anymore. I wonder some days what I ever saw in him.
Did you know, in the mornings when she wakes up, her breath will melt your face off?
He farts and then holds my head under the covers. That's not okay.
Honestly, I'm a little scared because I think I might have married my mother.
Well, I wouldn't have to act like his mother if he didn't act like a child. I mean, close the refrigerator door, pick up your shoes, take out the garbage. Seriously, how hard is it to obey?
She can't cook. I think she's slowly trying to poison me with her food.
Okay, 2 words. Road rage.
2 words. Shopaholic.
Have I mentioned he still has his comic book collection from junior high?
Did I mention that she still makes fun of me for having a comic book collection from junior high?
He's addicted to television.
She's addicted to purses. And I don't understand this, but for some reason, she manages to lose every purse she owns in the house. Seriously, how hard is it to lose something this big?
I thought we were supposed to be on the same team.
I'm still on the same team. Apparently, you defected, started playing for some other team that you made up in your mind.
That doesn't even make any sense.
Well, you don't make any sense.
Well, your gummy bears don't make any sense.
Oh, you're stupid.
Well, you're stupid.
Well, you made me this way. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry too. The purpose of marriage isn't to make us happy.
It's to make us holy, as we become more like Him.
I promise to love, honor, and respect you as you become more like Him.
And I promise to love, cherish, and protect you as you grow to become more like Him.
Like Him.
Just like Him.
It's not going to be easy.
No, it's not going to be easy, but it is good. And anything that good is always worth fighting for.
Hey, what are the basic causes of conflict? Let me give them to you real quick. There's 8 of them. Number 1, selfishness. Number 2, money. Number 3, family, parenting styles, holidays, where we spend the holidays, whatever. Number 4, sex. Number 5, our schedule. Next week, we're going to talk about time. We're going to talk about marriage and our calendar. Number 6 is stress. We asked you earlier, what was your toothpaste you used? Remember, when a conflict comes and you're squeezed, whatever's inside of you comes out. That's why it's so important that you have the Lord in your life. And so when you're squeezed, He comes out. That's why it's so important you get into His Word and you learn His Word. So when you're squeezed and conflict, you can respond the right way. And then number 7, security. When one of us doesn't feel secure, we have great conflict. And then number 8 really is it all boils down to a lack of self-control.
That's right. And in Galatians 5:22-23, it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such there is no law." And really, when you boil it all down, when you boil everything down with conflict, really, if we all lived this Bible verse, if we lived it, you would have less conflict in your lives, and you would also be able to handle conflict a whole lot better. This really is what it's all about, the fruit of the Spirit. And again, in this book that Nancy wrote on page 164, she put it together. And again, it's for men and women. But it says, and that's exactly the reason a lot of women are in trouble today. Their quote-unquote brakes don't work. Their thoughts, their attitudes, and their tongues are always racing full speed ahead with no way of stopping. A sensible, sound, self-controlled mindset will result in sensible, sound, self-controlled behavior. And really, to get more of self-control is to really, get more into Jesus, get into his word, and not only read it, but really, listen to it, really obey it. And it's not something that you just do, once. You have to really do it daily. It's like a daily walk. And I really think conflict, really, it all comes down to that. I think if we followed the fruit of the Spirit and really followed self-control, really got into the Word and really, listened and obeyed it and really did what it says, I think we'd be all, so much better off.
Yeah, and that's why, again, when you leave tonight, there's a couple of books back there. The one we had out there last week is just kind of like a small little devotional book for couples. We encourage you to check that one out. But now, sweetheart, it is time for one of our favorite parts of the night. You know what time it's for?
Couch chats.
It's time for Couch Chat. Hit that jingle.
It's Couch Chats with Pastor Kevin and Terry.
This is Lee and Leslie Dunbar, and they have agreed to be our guest on Couch Chats tonight. All right. Thank you, Lee and Leslie, for being here. Give them a hand for agreeing to do this tonight. All right.
How long have you guys been married, and where did you meet?
Well, we first met at a mutual friend's house, playing music and singing, and we've actually been married. We just had our 20th wedding anniversary this past summer, so we've been married for 20 years.
20 years. And so after 20 years, maybe perchance you might have, Lee, had, maybe one or two times of conflict over 20 years. So how do you guys normally respond when there's conflict?
Well, usually our conflicts are communication. I'm usually thinking 100 miles an hour faster than she's talking and don't understand and already assuming what she's going to say. And then I get puffed up and didn't listen. And then if I get angry, of course, I noticed something in that video we just watched, the sarcasm. I'm not as funny as I think I am. And usually when sarcasm makes, your wife doesn't know whether to laugh or cry when you're in a conflict. And that's not a good place to be. And then if it goes long enough, I want to win. And then you can't win. Do you want to add that?
Yeah, well. Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with that.
I typically try to ignore the situation, and I'm the type that I want to just give him the silent treatment, So that's how I deal with it.
And what kinds of conflicts do you have? What are your kind of the topics of your conflicts?
Scheduling. Just trying to fit it all in, and still it all boils down to communication. I'm not a good listener. Is what it boils down to, and
work and the kids and the family obligations and just sports and putting it all together. It's when we have our conflict.
Do you think now your kids are how old? How old are the kids, Leslie?
11 years old and 18 years old. 12. Oh, yeah, she's 12. 12. 12 and 18.
12
yeah.
and 18.
Yeah.
And so do you think that you have more conflict maybe now than you did when the kids were small or before there were kids? I mean, or do you think there's less conflict?
Actually, we had our deepest conflicts right after Brianna was born. Actually, Lee's going to answer this because this was our deepest conflict.
Yeah, we didn't. I think both of us are the kind of person that wants to avoid conflict, but after Brianna was like 6 months old, she was diagnosed with lupus. So you throw a new baby and a wife when everything's good with a new baby, that's a lot on a wife. She has a really needy person and a husband that need to be needy too. It overwhelms the wife. But then you throw in with the lupus, we didn't quite understand for a long time what was going on there. It sucked the life out of her, and I thought it was me. I thought I was the one that was sucking the life out of her.
But what was happening is we weren't communicating. We weren't. I was just trying to survive daily, and his needs weren't being met, and we just didn't talk and we didn't communicate. So looking back, that's when we had our deepest conflict.
So, I mean, we've got people here tonight at every stage, of a relationship. We've got people here tonight and they're dating. You got people here that are single. You have some folks that are divorced, and you have some folks that are engaged, maybe some that have just been married a few years, some like you guys been married 20 years. What kind of words of wisdom would you guys have for them about conflict? Because when Terry and I look at you guys from the outside, part of the reason why we asked you to do this tonight is because we were thinking about people, and conflict was one of those hard ones to ask somebody. How do you ask someone to come up here and talk about conflict in their relationship? And so we tried to think, okay, who do we know that does not seem to have a lot of conflict? And you guys either hide it very well, or you don't have conflict from an outsider's standpoint, and based on what you've learned a lot.
Yes, and we seek God first. I mean, right in the heat of the moment, you might not be able to, but if ahead of time, if we prepare our hearts and our minds and, how to deal with conflict in biblical and godly ways, that's going to help right then in that situation. But that's our one key, advice is to seek God first, but then to, listen to each other, to communicate, and don't give up.
I agree with that completely. You got to listen to each other. It's a lot of times we want to talk and not. I don't think you can talk and listen at the same time. But
well, that's good advice. I think sometimes we're thinking about what we're going to say next,
yes,
while the person we love is still talking. And we're formulating our response while they're still talking. Absolutely. And that probably is pouring gas on the fire.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks again to Lee and Leslie being willing to share with us tonight. Thank you, guys. Thank y'all.
It's Couch Chats with Pastor Kevin and Terry.
I love that cheesy jingle. I don't know about y'all, I just love it. So, hey, we've talked a lot about common causes of conflict. We talked about maybe the wrong ways. So, really what we wanted to get in tonight is number 3 there, a biblical way to reduce conflict. Ephesians 4 kind of gives us some keys that we're going to look at, but...
with us being married now 30 years, these are all different things that we have at one time or another, this has happened to us in our 30 years, and these are all things that are not helpful for a conflict. And, the one is, when you're getting a little angry, you shut those cabinets a little harder, to make it known that I'm not happy, you're a little angry. And then, of course, you stuff it. And then, of course, you do the 0 to 60 volcano eruption because you've just stuffed it, so now you're erupting. and of course the silent treatment. And, of course, some of the best things that you should do if you're having an argument are to, just like leave the room, stay within the area, but leave the room, give yourself a couple minutes, kind of cool down, count to 10, pray. That's obviously the very best thing you can do is pray. And something now that we have never done in our 30 years, and we don't recommend this at all, we've never, when we have gotten mad, we've never walked out of the house and gotten into a car and left. Or if you're at a place, we've never, gone somewhere and gone away from that place. We've always, you always want to stay, in the house, in the place that you're at, and just, cool down for a little bit. Like I said, go to another room, for a few minutes, take a breather, pray, then come back. We've heard too many stories of people getting so mad and actually, walking out of the house or walking out from the store or wherever they're at, and, they get into a car and, there's a car accident and they're killed, or they have a heart attack, or, and you wouldn't want that to be your last response to somebody, having that argument with them. So we always recommend that you stay in the house, stay in the place where you're at, don't leave. Just maybe move to another room, like I said, cool down, count to 10, pray, and then come back and figure it out and settle it.
I think some of them are still trying to get over the imagery of you slamming the cabinet doors hard.
Well, not like hard, but just
Really?
hard. Just you make it known that you're not happy. A little not happy here. Or that's you stuff it, and then like I said, it explodes at some point.
Yeah, it does. And so first thing you got to do is you got to deal with it honestly. Okay, you got to admit it, all right? You got to deal with it honestly. You got to admit it. Ephesians 4 says, put off falsehood, speak truthfully, okay? Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate. Don't hope it'll go away. Also don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Somebody said once there on your handout, anger isn't necessarily a sin, but lying about it is. Anger isn't necessarily a sin, but lying about it is. Sometimes, you're having a little conflict and they go, well, I'm not mad. Now, don't do this, okay? But sometimes you're thinking to yourself, liar, liar, pants on fire, okay? I mean, it's obvious you're mad. You just shut the cabinet door a little harder than normal. Okay? I mean, it's obvious that you're mad, right? Well, I'm not mad, okay? You got to deal with it honestly, okay? You got to admit it. And when it comes to an argument there.
All right, there's 3 phases to an argument. The first one's recognition. We've got a problem. Number 2 is reaction. I'm ticked off. And number 3 is your resolution. What are we going to do about it? And so many times in arguments, you make it to phase 2, but you never make it to phase 3 and get the problem solved.
Yeah, again, there is a appropriate and non-appropriate way to deal with it. Remember, anger's not a sin, right? God gets angry 375 times in the Old Testament. It says that God got angry. Jesus got angry. We know that anger is not a sin. Even the Bible says, in your anger, do not sin. It is possible. There's some things you should be angry about, okay? There's some injustices. There's some unfairness in the world. There are certain things we should be angry about. We've got to learn to be angry without it crossing the line to sin. And that's not going to happen until I deal with it honestly, till I admit it. Then what's B, sweetheart?
And B is you deal with it immediately. Don't go to bed mad. And we've talked about that, where we've had some, long nights until we got solved.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, verse 26 says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Remember, the devil's after you, and as a result of, this series, some of you are making some great steps. Matter of fact, beforehand, somebody told me tonight, hey, the first week y'all talked about putting your cell phones not there next to the bed, and, putting them so we're not always on our cell phone at bed and at night, and go out and buy a $5 alarm clock, and they said, we did that. It made such a huge difference. We were up till, now this person told me they were up till 4 in the morning talking. And I thought, man, that's great. So we normally hadn't done that. And so, but keep in mind, for every step we try to make in the right direction, not only does God know when he smiles, but Satan also takes note. And any psychologist will tell you that anger is energy. And when I swallow my anger, what happens is my stomach keeps score. Because anger basically produces biochemical changes in our body. I mean, our neck muscles get tight. You hear everybody say, that person's a pain in the neck. Well, they might actually be, okay? Your adrenaline goes. I mean, people say, well, man, it just burns me up. Well, actually your temperature's rising, right? Your heart rate's, okay? The key is we have this powerful emotion and we got to use it in the right way. The difference between anger and danger is just that little D up front. Anger expressed inappropriately is dangerous. Anger, what are we going to say there on the handout, dear?
It's not necessarily a sin, but bitterness is. It does make you bitter.
So don't go to bed mad. Deal with it honestly, deal with it immediately, and then deal with it appropriately or fight fair. Look what he says in verse 29 and following. He said, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another. On your handout, a fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. And again, we've been honest tonight, we haven't always done this.
Right, again, it's really following that fruit of the Spirit and really, learning how to really talk and listen, really sweetly, kind, gentle words in the right way with your spouse.
On your handout there, anger isn't necessarily a sin, but our response can be. So again, anger isn't necessarily a sin, but lying about it can be. Anger isn't necessarily a sin, but bitterness is. And anger isn't necessarily a sin, but our response can be. And we saw somewhere somebody give 7 rules for a fair fight. Now, we kind of advertised this tonight, and this is what a lot of people wanted to hear. So when you really are angry, when you're having a disagreement, how does it not go from anger to danger, okay? How do we live out these verses that I'm kind and I'm compassionate, even though I'm upset, okay? Again, anger is not sin, but bitterness is. But our response can be. So what are our 7 rules, sweetheart, for a fair fight that sometimes we violate?
Right. Right. And some of these you actually saw tonight on the videos.
Yeah.
You can see them being played out. Number 1 is never compare. Why can't you be like, your mom, your in-law, your parents, your friends, fill in the blank. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, number 2, never condemn. You always, you never. Or it's just like you to, probably it might be better to say, rather, I feel, or it seems to me. Just that one change. When you're really angry, and instead of saying you, say I. Let the first thing out of your mouth be I instead of you. Because you is attacking. Well, you, or you didn't, well, you should have, rather than, it's maybe better to say, I feel hurt when this happens. I feel like you don't care when this happens.
And then number 3 is never command. I demand you to do what I say, or don't try to parent your spouse.
Number 4, never challenge. You just try it and see what happens. Right? And, you don't challenge them. Man, I know you're frustrated. Don't threaten. Don't dare. Somebody gave us advice when we first got married, don't use the D word. The D word is off limits. The D word, the divorce word. Okay, you don't use that word. That word's just off limits. Now, I know there are reasons biblically, I believe there are few, but there are a few reasons where God allows divorce. But in the middle of an argument, in the middle of a fight, it's never appropriate, to try to challenge your spouse. You just try it, see what happens, and to threaten that's just a low blow. When it comes to threats in marriage, they're normally around money, they're around divorce, or they're around sex. That's normally what people threaten about, okay? I mean, it's not even right to well, you just try it and you'll be sleeping on the couch tonight, okay? I mean, you don't threaten your spouse, okay? You don't challenge them.
And then number 5 is never condescend. I know why you said that. Don't treat them like a child, even if they're acting like one.
Number 6, never contradict. Have a great interrogation. You just keep interrogating them over and over and over and over. You don't keep nagging them. You just don't keep on and on and on and on. A great interrogation. I mean, question after question after question. When you're in the middle of the fight, when you're in the middle of the argument, that's not pouring water on it, that's pouring gas on it.
And then number 7, never confuse. Stick with the issue. Don't bring up the past or unrelated issues.
But even if you follow these 7 rules, the main point we wanted to get to is D, you've got to choose to forgive. You got to choose to forgive. And we just wanted to say a couple quick things about that. The Bible says it this way in Matthew 6, if you don't forgive, your Father will not forgive you. And remember, number 1, forgiveness is not a feeling, it's an act of faith. It's a choice, it's an action. If I'm keeping score, it's not really forgiveness, okay? A better thing to do would be to try to out-please one another. You want a real great marriage? Try to out-please your spouse. You want a great relationship? You try to out-please them in all areas, okay? I mean, in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about closeness in marriage. You want a great sex life? Try to out-please your partner, okay? I mean, that's how you do it, okay? Matter of fact, there's a book as you leave tonight back there called The Act of Marriage that we would highly recommend. Tim and Beverly LaHaye wrote that. You can notice that as you leave. Number 2, first one is forgiveness is not a feeling, it's an act of faith. What's number 2, sweetie?
All right, number 2 is forgiveness is not a process, it's immediate. Just like God forgives us immediately, we should forgive immediately. But where we need to take time is in the healing, the restoration, and learning to trust again. And that's what takes time. Forgiveness is immediate, but it's the restoration, the trust again, and the healing is what takes the time.
So forgiveness is not a feeling, it's an act of faith. Forgiveness is not a process, it's immediate. Number 3, forgiveness is not approval, it's acceptance. Remember, on your handout, there's a difference between acceptance and approval. I'm accepting you as a person, but I don't approve of your actions. I don't approve of the way you treated me. I don't approve that you did this or you didn't do that, okay? So anyway, we got some questions here that people have texted in, sweetheart, all right? And they forwarded it to my phone here, so let's see. Okay, all right, wow. Are there things that each other does that irritate the other? How do you resolve that? Okay, so are there things that the other person does that irritates you, and how do you resolve that? So
Sure. There's things that irritate me about
so
you at
everybody
times.
is right now dying to know what are the things that irritate you about me.
Well, probably what you're hearing a lot is the cell phone. The
Yeah.
cell phone can irritate me a lot. So again, I have to communicate that to him. I have to tell it to him. I have to try to use kind, nice words and communicate that with him. And
So how do you
really
resolve that? I think you resolve it by the ways we just went over. I think you resolve it like we talked about. You deal with it honestly. You admit it. When it's your day off and you're always on the cell phone, I get ticked off. Maybe you might hear that. I mean, I maybe have heard that once or twice before. All right. And then B, you deal with it immediately, okay? You don't stew on it all day, and you deal with it appropriately, okay? You fight fair. That's how you do it. All right, here's another one. If you got questions, text them in, okay, and they'll shoot them to me. How do you keep weekly date nights fresh without it also becoming routine and mundane? We gave 20 suggestions. Was it 2 weeks ago we did that? I think it was. 2 weeks ago, we gave 20 suggestions for a date night. So if nothing else, I mean, goodness, that's 20.
Well, right, yeah. I mean, you just have to constantly, try to, get the creative juices flowing. And there's like tons of books. I think we even have we given those books out yet?
That's next week's books.
That's next week, okay.
That we're going to give you 31 ideas for men and 31 ideas for women.
There's all kinds of books out there. There's things online of all kinds of different date ideas and creative ideas. And so, just be creative and look at some of those ideas and come up with new things to do.
All right, another good question here. What are the common causes of conflict for men? Well, I think we went over the basic common causes of conflict, and I think these 8 fit men. We're selfish. We worry about money. We're concerned about the family, sex, our schedule, stress, security, lack of self-control. I think they're really the same for men and women. There might be some differences, but yeah, a lot of them are the same.
Sure. Sure. I would agree. I would agree with that.
All right, let's see what's to say. Oh, she did that. That was great. All right, let's see. If a difficult conflict arises, should we consult family members? If a difficult conflict arises, should we consult family members?
I'm always thinking you should, try to work it out yourself first.
Yeah, and I think the answer probably is it depends. I mean, I hate to give you a pin answer, but it does depend. It depends upon the situation. But I think what Terry said is right. You got to understand where your loyalty is now. Your loyalty is not to your family. Your loyalty is to your spouse. I'm assuming this is coming from a person that's in a marriage relationship, okay? And if that's the case, sometimes the worst thing you could do is bring the family into it, okay? Sometimes that just exasperates the problem. Normally, it's best just to keep it between the two of you. Deal with it immediately. Don't go to bed mad. Deal with it appropriately. Fight fair. Use those 7 rules. And then, at the end of it, choose to forgive is what we really have got to do. Good questions. Well, let's wrap it up with some action points. We've been saying it for weeks now. Number 1, good marriages don't just happen. You must work at it. It requires work. It's not easy. Conflict, remember, is something that will always happen. You're going to have it. And the first step to resolving conflict is establishing a relationship with Jesus. His power within you. As Terry mentioned there, it's really about having the fruit of the Spirit in you. But you're not going to have the fruit of the Spirit unless you have the Lord in you. Okay, you got to have the Lord in you, and you got to walk by the Spirit. And Galatians 5 says you got to keep in step with the Spirit, right? It's about the Spirit. And then number 3 is what, sweetheart?
To reduce conflict, you must walk daily with the Lord. And it really is, like I was saying before, it really is a daily walk. I mean, each new day, you're really asking the Lord, to help me, love today, have joy today, be forgiving, have self-control, and just really, each day, just really try to walk with Him really close.
So last week we talked about this little book, Nightlight. I know so many of you picked that up, and they're in the back. It's kind of like, again, Our Daily Bread for couples. It's just every night a great little suggestion. The other one tonight, a book. It's called The Act of Marriage. First of all, this book says more than 2.5 million in print. Just let that resonate in your brain, okay? If there's a book that's been got 2.5 million copies of it. It must be pretty good. And there's no way to say this other than to say this. We give this book out whenever I do premarital counseling. This is a book, was actually given, it's been revised and updated, but it was actually given to us before we got married. And it is the detailed, basically, it talks about the beauty of sexual love in a married relationship. And it is awesome. So we would highly recommend that book there in the back. You can check that out as well. We're glad you're here tonight. Next week, we're going to talk about the calendar in marriage and talk about schedule and how it's something that we all battle with. Even Lee and Leslie talked about that was the source of a conflict. A lot of difficulties we face with that is as it relates to that. So thank you for coming. We want you to know you are doing the right thing. We are proud of you. By you making the choice to come tonight, God is going to bless you. You're investing in your relationship or your future relationship that you hope to have one day. And we're proud of you. We're praying for you. We're available for you. And as we said at the beginning, we violated about everything we went over tonight, okay, in our 30-some-odd years. Hopefully, we've given you maybe a nugget tonight, an idea, a thought, something to kind of just generate your juices. But I do believe if we'll follow those 7 rules for a fair fight, we'll pour some water rather than gas on the conflict. We can't ignore it. We can't give the silent treatment. We can't win at other costs. We can't push buttons. We can't bring up the past. We can't just give in and be a doormat. We do got to deal with it honestly, deal with it immediately, deal with it appropriately. But ultimately, we got to choose to forgive and stop bringing up stuff from the past.
I wish we had known this stuff like way long time ago.
Yeah, we were talking about that when we were kind of prepping for this. We wish that somebody, and we did marriage counseling and everything before we got married. We wish somebody would have sat down and done this. And part of the reason why we're recording this tonight is whenever you're watching this, maybe sometime in the future, we're trying to help you as well. So thank you for being here. Let me pray and we'll wrap it up. God, we love you. We know that the ultimate conflict is a conflict we have with you. And I'm thankful that Jesus Christ came and died on the cross and was buried and rose from the dead to make it possible for us to be reconciled with you. And Father, we're grateful that, Lord, once we're reconciled with you, that you desire us to be your ambassadors, your ministers of reconciliation, certainly to those that we love. And so, Lord, I know that you've looked down tonight and smiled as these who've come. But I also know that Satan will take notice. So would you bind Satan from their marriage and their relationships? In Jesus' name, amen. Have a good night. Lord bless you.